Was there a human before Adam? The Forbidden Truth of Genesis. Part 1. The first man? Or just the first story? Rewritten extended and pure English. Ask almost anyone raised in a biblical tradition. Who was the first human? The answer comes quickly. Adam. The man made from dust, breathed into by God himself, given a garden, named the animals, paired with Eve, banished from paradise. That's the version most people know. But what if Adam wasn't the first? What if the biblical narrative contains a hidden clue, one that theologians have avoided and religious institutions have silenced? Let's start with a simple observation. Genesis contains 2 creation accounts, back to back. Genesis 1. On the 6th day, God creates male and female in his image. Genesis 2. Suddenly, there is one man, Adam, created alone from dust. Later, God takes a rib from Adam and forms Eve. These are not the same story, and they don't align perfectly. So what gives? Some scholars suggest these 2 accounts are not duplicates, but descriptions of different events, or even different types of humans. In other words, Genesis 1 may describe the creation of humankind as a whole. Genesis 2 may zoom in on a particular human, set apart for a spiritual role. Adam, the one chosen to enter the garden and commune with God. This raises a radical but ancient idea. Adam was not the first human biologically. He was the first awakened human spiritually. And this isn't a modern theory. Ancient Jewish texts and mystical writings speak of worlds before this one, of creations before Adam, and of human-like beings who existed before Eden. In Kabbalistic lore, there were multiple Adams. Adam Harishon, the first spiritual template, Adam of dust, the physical manifestation, and possibly pre-Adamic beings, living, breathing, but unaware of God. Even more intriguing are the questions the Genesis narrative refuses to answer. If Adam and Eve were the first 2 people, who was Cain afraid of after killing Abel? Where did Cain get his wife? Who lived in the land of Nod, and how did Cain build a city there? A city? A population? From where? These are not fringe questions. They are embedded in the text. Some believe the Bible is hinting at another population, a pre-Adamic group of humans who existed before Adam's spiritual covenant was formed. And then there's the language God uses. Let us make man in our image. Who is us? Why plural? Some say it's the divine council. Others say it reflects the presence of other celestial beings. But taken literally, it suggests Adam was not created in isolation, neither spiritually nor cosmically. So the real question might not be, was Adam the first man? But rather, was Adam the beginning of something, or the awakening of something ancient? And if that's true, then the story of Genesis is not a scientific origin. It's a spiritual turning point, one that doesn't close the door on human history, but opens it wider than we've ever dared to imagine. Part 2, lost traditions, buried texts, and theories they never taught you. Let's say Adam wasn't the first biological human. Let's say he was the first awakened one, spiritually activated, consciously aware, directly communing with the divine. If that's true, then who came before him? Surprisingly, the idea isn't new. In fact, it may be older than Adam himself. Throughout Jewish mysticism, early Christian writings, and even fragments of ancient myth, there are whispers of a world before Eden and of beings who walked the earth long before Genesis 2 ever happened. Ancient Jewish thought, the other Adams. In Kabbalistic tradition, the concept of multiple Adams is deeply embedded. There's Adam Kadmon, a primordial cosmic archetype, the first human soul consciousness. Physical Adam, the one formed from clay in the garden. These layers hint at a multidimensional view of creation, not a single linear event, but an unfolding. Midrashic texts even describe worlds before this one, where God created and destroyed prior versions of creation before the one we inhabit now. Some of these worlds may have contained human-like beings, imperfect or incomplete. One Midrash claims, God created and destroyed many worlds before this one, saying, "This one doesn't please me." So if Genesis 1 describes a broad, possibly pre-Adamic creation of humankind, Genesis 2 might mark the beginning of something higher, a chosen lineage, a covenantal spark, a spiritual consciousness. But the questions don't stop there. Cain's exile, the mystery that breaks the timeline. Genesis 4 contains a theological landmine. After Cain kills Abel, God banishes him, and Cain says, "Whoever finds me will kill me." Wait, who else is there? Then it says, Cain went east of Eden to the land of Nod and built a city. A city? For who? Where did he find his wife? Where did those people come from? The Bible doesn't explain, because maybe it assumes the reader knows, or maybe it wasn't allowed to say more. Some scholars believe Cain married into a pre-Adamic population. Others think Nod was a remnant of that first unnamed creation, a civilization that predated Adam's covenantal line. This would mean Adam wasn't humanity's origin. He was the beginning of a spiritual upgrade. The apocryphal and forbidden texts. Beyond the Bible, there are books the early church excluded, some intentionally. The Book of Enoch speaks of watchers, angels who descended to earth, mated with women, and birthed the Nephilim, giants of old. The Book of Jubilees gives deeper timelines that seem to extend creation far beyond Adam's moment. The Apocryphon of John, a Gnostic text, describes multiple creators, layers of humanity, and a spiritual Adam born from divine light after the formation of physical beings. These writings weren't fringe. They were read, copied, and preserved by early communities, until the canon was locked and institutional orthodoxy chose which truths would be remembered and which would be buried. Why were these texts removed? Because they asked dangerous questions. Because they didn't fit the narrative of a linear, closed, and controllable origin story. Science and scripture, clashing or converging. Modern science tells us Homo sapiens emerged over 300,000 years ago, with even older relatives like Neanderthals and Denisovans long before that. So where does Adam fit into this timeline? If you read Genesis literally, it doesn't. But if you read Genesis mystically, Adam doesn't mark the first life. He marks the first spark of soul consciousness. He is the first human who recognized the divine, who chose obedience or rebellion, who could be in relationship with the Creator. That's not biology. That's awareness. Maybe God didn't make humans in a moment. Maybe he awakened humanity in one. And maybe Adam was that moment. Part 3, why the question was silenced and why it matters now. Let's be honest. If the idea of pre-Adamic humans has existed for centuries, if the questions are right there in Genesis, why isn't this talked about more? Why is the possibility of someone before Adam treated like heresy? The answer is simple. Power fears complexity, and institutions need control. For centuries, religious systems have depended on a linear narrative. Adam was the first man. He sinned. That sin passed to all of us. We need salvation through one system. But if Adam wasn't the first, the whole system begins to shake. It threatens doctrinal simplicity. If there were humans before Adam, then original sin becomes more symbolic than biological. The fall becomes a story of spiritual choice, not just historical event. And if Adam wasn't the first human, then the gospel isn't just about repairing a broken bloodline, but awakening a deeper human potential. That's not a threat. That's a bigger gospel. But it's also harder to control. And so over time, the mystery was buried beneath dogma. The silencing of the mystical view. In early Christianity, the mystical view of Genesis was alive and well. Church fathers like Origen, Irenaeus, and Clement of Alexandria saw scripture as layered, symbolic, not just literal. But when the empire and the church became one, symbol became law, mystery became threat, and curiosity became rebellion. By the 4th century, councils were convened to decide what counts. And anything that opened the door to questions like, who came before Adam, was quietly left out. Books were banned, texts were burned, and a version of the Bible emerged that was safe for the empire. But truth doesn't die, it waits. Why it matters now. So why should this matter to you today? Because the world is hungry for something deeper. People are walking away from religion, not because they hate God, but because they know there's more than what they've been told. They sense the Bible is not just a set of rules, but a cosmic puzzle, a multi-layered story about who we really are. And in that story, Adam isn't the beginning of life. He's the beginning of awareness. He's the first human who realized, I am naked. I have choice. I can walk with God or hide from him. That moment is not about chronology. It's about consciousness, reclaiming a bigger Genesis. Maybe Genesis isn't a history book. Maybe it's a mirror. Maybe Eden isn't a place in the past. Maybe it's a state of being we all remember and long to return to. If so, then the question, was there a human before Adam, isn't a threat to faith. It's a call to grow. It means that you don't have to fear science. You don't have to reject evolution. You don't have to choose between your mind and your soul. You just have to be willing to let go of small answers and step into a much bigger mystery. Because maybe the story of Adam wasn't about being first. It was about being awakened. And maybe right now, that's exactly what's happening to you.
More uncomfortable questions, more hidden truths, more mind-opening discussions. Subscribe now and turn on the bell if you're ready to see beyond the surface.